Hey, BassGeek here, and for some reason a lot of people think that you didn't fish deep and you didn't fish offshore until Forward Facing Sonar come out. Well, I got news for you. We've been doing that around here for many a year. Fishing geeks, that's right. Listen, open water fish, suspended bass, whatever you want to call them, whether they're chasing shad, whether they're sitting on structure or hanging around cover, to be able to chase those shad when they come around, when they come by, or whether it be winter or summer or fall, we've been chasing those fish for a long time, well before Forward Facing Sonar ever come out. We did use some tools, of course, way back in the day. We used our flashers, which really was the first ever live. Your 2D sonar, believe it or not, every single one of them has a feature. Now again, I don't know what Garmin calls it. I know Humminbird called it an RTS, but it's a real-time, or RTW, something like that, real-time window, which is basically a flasher on the side. Use that for years. Tons of videos where you can see me using that. Demiki rigging during the wintertime. And then to help find those areas, once we got down inside imaging, it really helped us locate those areas that were holding a lot of shad and holding a lot of bass, and it made the hunt for those fish a lot easier. And I'm going to show you some techniques and a few baits today that should help you be able to get out and do that. So with that live scope, you've got to focus on something. You've got to focus on structure, so whether it be points, whether it be humps, whether it be bluff walls. You've got to have something that you're going to key in on. Not only does it help kind of congregate the bass and the shad around it, but it helps you keep your positioning, knowing where you're at. And most of the time, almost any year, shad and bass are going to be, there's going to be a group of them at least. May not be the majority of them, as we've kind of learned, but there's going to be groups that are going to key on that sort of stuff. Deep structure, they're going to key on brush piles or deep weed lines that are out away from the shore. So those are all ways that you can find bass. You're going to think of shad like structure. So that shad is out there moving, so the structure is out there moving around. But once you find those large groupings, and they'll even be patterns. So sometimes it'll be big shad balls, little shad balls, broken up shad balls, and it's just different from lake to lake. Now on your lake, it could be bluegill or crappie. They could be out there focused around panfish of some sort, which will go out deeper during the summer too. And that's where your big bass are going to hold up. For the most part, that's the sort of thing you want to be looking for. So you want to be finding areas that have shad, because I'll almost guarantee you that during these times of year, which most of the time it's going to be summer, it's going to be fall, and it's going to be winter. Now spring, late winter, early spring, this can happen too, but for the most part, you're really going to focus on this summer, fall, and winter. And there's certain patterns that I enjoy fishing and I think I can help you with when all this starts going on. Let's talk about the baits real quick. So I'm going to show you a lot of baits, and there's a lot of great heads out there. We'll talk about all that stuff, and links will be in the description so you can go pick up some of my favorites. The technique almost any time is about the same. It's one or two ways to do this, and the technique is about the same no matter what you're doing. So let's talk about some of the baits. Now some of these are going to carry over into, from summer to fall, even into winter. And one of these is absolutely going to be your bigger swim baits, your 5s, your 6, even all the way up to your 7 inches this time of year. Now what I like about these baits, and this is a Ramsey baits right here. It's been laying in the bottom of the boat. Forgive me, they look a lot better. But he makes me some custom colors. You guys have seen him 100 times. Go check him out. He's a local independent bait maker. Makes my favorite swim bait. But I like to put it on a jig head. So I don't really mind the line throughs, because I like a jig head so that I can adjust the weight, which means I can adjust the depth. If I'm fishing super shallow, like if I know they're 5 feet or less, that's when I'm going to use a line through with a treble hook, because I know I need to keep that bait above them. I'm not going to use a lot of weight at all. If a single hook, heavy jig hook, is good enough to pull them out of some of the heaviest cover you can possibly fish, it's good enough for me. And I don't lose a lot of fish on these because you don't fight the bass with them. But that's why I like this, because being able to adjust the depth, the running depth, and the speed is key, and that keeps you versatile. Now, this is actually a Ledge Head Lures ledge head. This is one of my favorite heads, especially when I'm using like Bastrix or Shadowlicious, those hollow bodies, so they're completely hollow inside. It saves you baits because of this arm and this big screw lock keeper. Now, next up, staying, in those summer months, is this right here, and this is an underspin. This is the Dirty Jigs underspin. They make them in all kinds of sizes, from finesse to the heavy, and again, a Ramsey bait. This is a 3.5. Love this bait because it is so girthy, geeks. Take a drink. You guys know what I mean now. So this is an incredible little combo right here to run through those shad. Now, I'm just showing you the baits right now. We're going to talk about how to do this stuff, how to cast, how to find them, what to look for in just a minute. But first, I want to give you a few techniques. Now, you always want to match the hatch, but I'll give you a little tip on this that I learned a long time ago. Go bigger. A lot of times you can get reaction bites doing two things. You can get reaction bites by moving slowly, introducing some sort of flash or some sort of size, going bigger, because a lot of times they'll react to that bigger bait because, as I always say, they want a steak, not a bunch of Vienna sausages. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my bourbon glazed Vienna sausages, but I'm gonna take a steak anytime, you know what I'm saying? But don't be afraid to go smaller. This is, of course, the Swing Impact Fat from Kitech, and this is another great head. We'll talk a little more about that in just a second, but this is a spin head, or what the guy Destroyer Baits calls them, is a jar head. And of course, the Exxon Swammer is one of my favorite colors here. This is a mouthful. It is Pro Blue Red Pearl, maybe something like that. I always get it wrong. Now, there are a few hard baits that I'm going to use from summer through fall, and this is one of my favorites right here. This is from Duo Realis. This is the spin bait. I think this is an 80. They make all kinds of different sizes that you can use. The alphas are great for smaller shad, but this is a great and kind of my go-to size, and you can kind of tell this is my go-to bait. I've caught a ton of bass on this. Works great in the summer, fall, and winter. But again, a spy bait can, especially when you get around smallmouth, don't discount it around largemouth. It can do work for you. Now, fall through winter, I got a couple of little baits here that work real well. And if you guys haven't seen this video from Duo, this is the Duo BR head and BR fish. Now, those little wings right there, and I don't know if you can tell, but there's a flat bottom to it, are designed so that you can walk the dog with this bait. It's a pretty incredible bait. Now, it's a little particular, and you've got to make sure that you're combining it with the BR fish. So this head isn't going to work with just any minnow. There's a few of them out there. It has to have a flat bottom and a rounded side with a tapered tail. This is one of my favorites right here, though, because you can walk the dog. It's great from fall into early winter. Another bait that is great at the same time is the Jaw Dropper by First Gen. I love to couple this when they're feeding on small shad in the winter time. I love to couple this with a Damiki Armor Shad. One of my favorite winter baits. It's one of my favorite jig head minnow baits. But this head, because of the lip, will also walk side to side extremely well. We've caught a ton of fish on both of these baits from fall to early winter. So if you're noticing a commonality between these baits is that you can fish them all through the water column based on just changing out the head a little bit and the weight of that head. When I show you these two baits, you're going to be really surprised, especially when I start talking about offshore. But they really come into play a lot late summer, early fall. And this really isn't just a fall thing. The predominant pattern last year for us was topwater walking baits. During the middle of the summer, during the middle of the day, bluebird sky, hot as hell, geeks. I'm telling you, it was incredible. And this bait right here did a lot of the work. But when you get out there and you see shad popping, you see bait popping in open water, get out there, pay attention, because there's almost always a pattern. I don't understand why it is, but the bass will almost always surface in certain areas. And just set your boat up to where you can stay off the trolling motor and just float around, have something that, you know, you gotta have a setup you can cast them all, but topwater is an incredible way to call those fish up, especially on those clear bodies of water like we're on today. And this is, of course, the one knocker head and spook, and it has done so much work for me over the years. And again, you can see. But for me, when you're out over that deeper water, you want a bait that's going to have an incredible glide side to side, and it's going to stay in place. That's why I like this true cigar style topwater. Now, I've got two, but I don't have one here with me. If you haven't seen the prank video, you need to go back and check that out too. But of course, the Royal Rico, the poppers, this little bait is devastating up here on South Holston for me in this bone color. We've caught a couple, I think, the past 2 days on it. Some big smallmouth here in the fall. Now, believe it or not, I have, in the middle of summer, called largemouth bass up over 120 feet of water with a Rico and a prank from Booyah. So again, links will be in the description. I don't, like I said, I don't have one with me, but we'll throw a picture up of one. But this Rico, I mean, you can tell, you know, I beat the eyeball out of it. I have to give me some eyes and put in it. But they're incredible. Next up, and a lot of you are going to think I'm crazy, but open water, and if you put a belly weighted hook on them, they are money. You can get them down deep. They look like dying shad, and bass destroy them. I use them as a follow-up to an underspin and a swim bait a lot of time during the summer, and everybody knows they're money during the fall. But that is some sort of soft plastic jerkbait. A soft plastic jerkbait, you can work it pretty much any depth level if you can find the right hooks to use with it. Now, this is an Exxon Whiplash shad, and this is I think it's a Gamakatsu Superline belly weighted hook. There's a ton of them out there. You can use whoever you want. We'll put a couple down in the description again. Now, this is a Strike King caffeine shad, and I love this because it's really heavy. One of my favorite colors right here, Ghost Shad. It's got a lot of salt in it, so it's going to really sink. It's one of the heavier. You can tell just by the tail of the bait how far it'll sink and how fast it'll sink. So you can get that down there, both these down there, really, really fast. So during the wintertime, there's about 3 different techniques that really begin to take over as we get into the colder months. One of them is the big spoon. So vertical spooning. Late fall, there is an incredible shallow to semi-deep, at least in my area, flutter spoon bite. For the most part, vertical spooning. This is the Duh spoon. We've been using this today down to about 60 feet. I think this one's 1 ounce and 3/4, which will get down there fast. I love the shape of it. If you thumb the reel a little bit, it gets down there really quick. And of course, it comes with a quality swivel on it. So this is one of the techniques that you can use in open water during the wintertime. One of the other techniques, it's got to be a blade bait. Heavy metal in the wintertime, a blade bait like the Demiki Vault. They come in a ton of different sizes. I think this is their 1/4 ounce. You can get them all the way up to 3/4 ounce, which is a great size this time of year. You can get out there and vertical this. You can take it down some banks and hop it. Just a lot of different ways that you can fish this bait when it comes to offshore or open water fish in the wintertime. Last but not least, to this day, it's still one of the most productive ways to catch bass during the winter time, during the dead of the winter for me. And that is a good old vertical Damiki rig. That's the Damiki rig head, and that's the armor shad, the 3-inch version. Now, something that we noticed today was that they were feeding on some big alewives. I mean, we're talking like 5 inches is what they're targeting right now. So, of course, we pull out the 5-inch armor shad. So something that you're going to want to pay attention to is size. Everybody thinks downsize in the winter, but a lot of times that is not the case. Especially the smallmouth this time of year, they are going to be feeding deep, and they're going to be feeding on bigger than normal alewives, because that's where those big ones go, down deep. So the very first thing you've got to do is find shad. Now, whether it means you're out on your boat using your graphs, or it means you're on the bank and you just see them popping and busting, you got to know that there's some sort of shad in the area when you're going to fish open water without forward-facing sonar. One of the things that I used to always do is, even if I knew that there were shad in the area, I can guarantee you that there's probably going to be bass on places in that area that have been feeding and pulled up into cover just to kind of rest. You know, so if you've got an area that's got maybe some rock and bluff walls like over here, or you've got some laydowns like right over there, a lot of times you can fish the shoreline. Now, one of the things that I love is I try to get up into those creeks, even the first third, because it pinches down, it forces those bass to congregate in the smaller areas in the summer and in the winter. So don't let anybody tell you that there's no bass up in the creeks. They're gonna be, and they're gonna live in that first third, no matter what time of year it is. Maybe even halfway back up in there. As long as there's water on it year round, they're gonna be some bass close by. So the very first key, especially in summer, because what you're doing is you're really throwing moving baits. You're throwing baits that you're casting out, you're counting down, and you're reeling back. So you got to find out how deep the bass are. Now we can see here, and it's a little later in the year, during the summertime they won't be that deep, but we got a ball of shad, and right underneath them we've got 2 bass. So they're about 30 feet deep. Actually, I said during the summer they won't be that deep, but a lot of times it's 25 to 30 feet. It's about the average that I'm fishing for. So let me show you how to figure out the rate of fall, a quick, easy, cheater sort of way, and how to make that cast. So one of the keys to making sure that you are getting your bait at the right depth is to understand the fall rate. A lot of people could tell you an eighth, a 3/8, a half ounce, gonna fall this, that, or the other. This is a half ounce, and by the time you add the soft plastic and by the time you add the blade, it's gonna fall a little differently than all the rest. So this is something that I kind of like to do. This is a 7'3" rod. So, you know, about 3 inches, probably gonna be about right in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down, I'm gonna set the head at about where I think, you know, 3 inches is. I do this, I make sure that I get a good hard fall because I'm making a long cast. But what I do now is I let this fall on slack line until it tings. And that tells me, as I count either 1/100 or 1 Mississippi, but that tells me how many feet roughly this bait is going to fall per second. So if you counted along with me, that was about 4 Mississippi right there. So it took about 4 seconds to fall 7 feet. So we know that it's going to fall 7 feet every 4 seconds. We can half that, and we now know that every 2 seconds it's going to fall about 3.5 feet. And then we can half that, and we could say it's going to fall about 1 3/4 foot a second. Now, to make the math nice and easy, we're just going to call it 2 feet a second. And just remember, stop it just a little bit early. Yeah, geeks, it's a lot of work. I spent years honing this in and teaching myself how to do this, but it can be done, and I've got videos to prove it. Now, fishing geeks, I always think it's funny when people look at me and they're like, you're always looking down at that screen. Well, I look down at my 2D screen back when I used to do this, and the reason why is because as you come back to the boat, you bring that swim bait back to the boat, it's going to come into that cone on that 2D screen, and as it comes up in that cone on that 2D screen, you're going to see a horizontal line. Now, if there are multiple horizontal lines, what that tells you is you've got followers. That's a video for another day on how to capitalize on that. You should be staring at the screen as that bait comes in. So now let's talk about vertical presentations. Got your horizontal, got your countdown. I'm going to show you a little something on the 2D that's going to allow you to vertically present baits to bass. And if you're fishing structure, as long as you got a map and you can get that on your phone, you can do this without even having a graph. So you can see I've got my forward facing sonar graph off. Here is my 2D. Now this is the color I like. I've just always used it. I used to use Lowrance back in the day. You can see a lot of this stuff, some of it might be fish, but a lot of this, that's probably definitely a bass. But a lot of this is probably stuff in the water, and those lines are a little bit of interference. So that's probably a bass. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that could be fish on the bottom. I'm going to show you what this is. Now you see this little line right here? I'm going to show you a little something. I'm going to take this little bait right here, and I'm going to drop it in front of my trolling motor. And if you'll see right there is my bait going down. All right, I can keep it just off the bottom. I can jig it. So that is the real-time interpretation. So it's live. This is not, this is live. So as you can see, that is a ball of shad. So something that I like to do is throw my bait. You'll see it, here comes a bass up to it. And I'm just gonna jig it. That's my bait coming back off the bottom. Oh, and I just got a bite. Oh no, I did. I had one. Look there, he pulled my pants down. No forward facing sonar. Didn't catch him, but I've got plenty of videos where I do with that forward facing sonar. So geeks, that really covers your horizontal presentation, how you can cast out, count down. You can pretty much do that with spy baits. You can do that with your soft jerk baits. Now topwater, I think you know how to fish at topwater, most of you do. If you don't, I've got videos, go look them up. The horizontal presentation, it really is just that. You're getting over them, you're looking at them, you're gonna see them, and every single 2D sonar has that live window right there. I don't care how big or small it is. If it don't, it's got a flasher, and realistically, you're better off using a flasher than the 2D at that point. So you can get out here and do a lot of things. It's going to work the same with a spoon. It's going to work the same with a blade bait. Any of these baits that we covered today, it's going to work the exact same. Pretty straightforward and simple. Like I said, I've done this for years. It is easily done. You just have to learn the patterns that the shad are moving in these little creek areas like this. So if you want to see me fishing any of these styles, I've literally got a fishing video playlist from winter to summer. I've even got playlists on winter and summer fishing, yada, 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 if you want to break them down. So I'm just going to send you to my fishing playlist. You can dig through some of the older videos and see me doing this without forward facing sonar. To me, geeks, I live by the motto, it's easy to point out a problem. It's easy to bellyache and cry. It's hard to find a solution. All you guys that say you can't compete, I just gave you a solution. Go out there and use it. Now, go check out this playlist of fishing videos. There's plenty of proof in it. Plus, man, it's some good stuff if you want to watch and some good information out there. Anyway, questions, comments in the comment section below. You geeks know I love to talk about fishing with you. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell so you can be part of the 100% Watch Squad. You geeks are helping grow this channel incredibly. You geeks rock.